Hey guys, Anton the Tech Chap, but I want to find out which has the best camera between the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra and the Oppo Find X2 Pro. As always in these camera comparisons, I'm going to give you my opinion along the way, but I want to hear what you think. So at the end, vote in the little poll at the top right which pops up, and also let me know in the comments below which one you think comes out on top and which one you would go for. So here they are side by side, and just to say I haven't edited any of the images, although the Oppo is a pre-retail model, so bear that in mind. Now on the S20 we get a quad camera setup which includes the usual main, ultra-wide and telephoto lenses. Plus we get a time of flight sensor which should help give us more natural bokeh blur in portrait shots. The Find X2 Pro has a triple camera setup, we don't get that time of flight sensor here, and the telephoto lens gives us up to 60 times zoom. Alright, so let's kick off with some rear-facing video. This is being shot at 4K, although the S20 can actually go up to 8K, but for now we'll stick with 4K 30. And let's actually start with a little focus test, looking at these daffodils. So we're close up, far away, close up, far away. It's like Homer Simpson with bed goes up, bed goes down, but hopefully this is demonstrating which is faster to focus. Let's test the stability. So this is just me walking using the main lens on the rear camera, but then if we switch it to the ultra wide, you can see how that compares. And you can actually definitely see that there's more in the frame on the S20 Ultra. It's a little bit of a wider field of view. Apologies for this very miserable grey day here in the UK. Let's jump back to the regular lens again, like so. And then if we switch to the 5 times zoom on both, 10 times telephoto zoom on both. See if we can focus on that sign. They're both struggling a little bit, but from the viewfinder it looks like the Oppo is in the middle of an earthquake. And then back to 1 again. So I found a bit of a quieter area where I can test the super steady or ultra steady modes on both phones. It limits the resolution to 1080p, but as soon as I start having a little jog, hopefully you can see how the stabilization compares between the phones. If anyone saw me now, they'd definitely be wondering what I'm doing, holding 2 phones side by side while jogging. And we're back. Alright, next question. How does front-facing video compare? I'm just walking through this little Airbnb that I'm staying in for a couple of days, but hopefully as you can see the lighting keeps changing, so you should be able to get an idea of how the cameras compare. I'm shooting this in 4K on the S20 because it can. The Oppo tops out at 1080p, which is kind of surprising actually, given the fact that it's a 2020 flagship phone that costs about £1,200. That's a little bit disappointing, but side by side, you can see the Oppo has a little bit more in the frame. It's got a slightly wider field of view, although the colors on the S20 do look a bit more natural. I do look very washed out and pale on the Oppo, which I am normally, but not that much. So I think I prefer the S20 just looking at the screens, but yeah, they do a pretty good job. What do you think? How do you think they compare? Alright then, so let's move on to some photos, and I want to show you the full range of lenses. Starting with the ultra wide, and then onto the main lens, then 2 times zoom, 5 times zoom, 10 times zoom, 30 times, 60 times, which is the max zoom of the Oppo, but then finally 100 times zoom on the Samsung. Although I've also cropped in on the Oppo to show its 100 times equivalent. Let me show you another example, this time in trickier lighting here in Piccadilly Circus in London. Starting with the ultra-wide and then switching to the main lens, you can see the Oppo is brighter, more evenly exposed, and offers a good deal more detail in the darker areas. Moving up to 5 times zoom, and they both do a really good job. Although I think the Samsung's colors are a touch more natural. 10 times zoom now, and like the previous tree photo, the Oppo shots become a lot darker, although at the same time it means the highlights are better exposed. As we zoom into 30 times though, which I think is the realistic maximum that you should actually use before the photos start to get really ugly, and the Samsung does take the lead, but not by as much as I would have thought. Okay, let's switch things up a bit, and by default we get 12 megapixel photos from the main lens on both phones. They use what's called pixel binning to combine multiple pixels into one, 9 on the Samsung, 4 on the Oppo. Now this photo is using their full resolution, 108 and 48 megapixels on the Samsung and Oppo respectively. Now if I switch back and forth a couple times, you can see on the surface there isn't that much difference, although the Samsung's full res shot is a little bit darker. But if we crop in by 10 times on the standard 12 megapixel shot, the Oppo is actually a little bit sharper. Now if we do the same again on the full resolution photo, the Samsung's 108 megapixels come into its own. It's a lot more detailed. Moving on to a couple of portrait shots, or what Samsung call live focus. And we're definitely seeing a pattern of the Oppo shots being brighter, which can be a benefit in some photos, but here the Samsung definitely looks more natural. Zooming in, edge detection isn't exactly perfect on either of them. The top left of the mug on the Samsung and part of the bench on the Oppo have tripped it up slightly. Now this is my lovely wife Sarah, who's kindly putting up with me doing a camera comparison while we're on holiday, but you can see a stark difference between the two photos. The S20 has higher contrast and shadows, versus the flatter, slightly more washed out look of the Oppo. Although the benefit is that you can see more detail in darker areas. Now both phones can shoot portraits with their main lens or their telephoto. On the wide shot, the Samsung is much sharper, colors again are more accurate, and the Oppo just looks a little bit flat. Using the telephoto lens, the Oppo's made me look kind of ill, which isn't ideal, and my hair has a weird reddish tint to it. I think the Samsung wins here. Okay, now I'm going to shut up for a second and just show you guys a few more photos to give you an idea how the cameras compare. Now this is using the normal photo mode, not the dedicated night mode. Still, you can see the Samsung manages to keep more in focus. The guy with the umbrella, the sign on the bus. The Samsung offers better dynamic range in lower light. The colors are also much more natural. The bottles behind the bar aren't all bathed in yellow like on the Oppo. Now using the ultra-wide lens and night mode on a tripod, you can see the big differences in colors. While the Oppo does more accurately capture the black of the night sky, the street and the houses look much better on the Samsung. Oh, and here's Samsung's 100 times space zoom versus Oppo's 60 times zoom. Yes, the Samsung is a splodgy mess and 100 times is kind of dumb, but it's certainly better than the competition. As for low light selfies, well, this is a regular selfie and this is with night mode. Neither exactly look great, but the Oppo is a good deal brighter. But then, back in the daylight, the Oppo's selfies look kind of bad, to be honest. It was a similar story with the photos of me from the rear camera. The Oppo is just too bright and too washed out sometimes when it comes to skin tones. On this one, the Oppo has done a better job, so the quality is dependent on the light. But I think overall, the Samsung has a better all-round selfie camera. So then, what do you think? Which one has the best camera overall? I will admit that I'm not a professional photographer, so I'm just giving you my 2 cents, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about the photos as well. Make sure you do subscribe and stay tuned for my full reviews on both phones coming soon, and I'll catch you next time right here on the Tech Chat.